the only and true ball game is between Catholics and Orthodox. And since we're both apostolic and we're both sacramental religions, the way that Christianity is supposed to be, one holy Catholic and apostolic, it just doesn't leave Protestants, who we do believe are true Christians because they have a Trinitarian baptism, it doesn't leave them much to say. But so whether you're from the West and you're just a chauvinist for the West on behalf of Western civilization, or you want to actually look at first principles, why were all of these institutions given to the West for the West? It's actually because of the principles of timeless, Pope-led, apostolic, sacramental Christianity known as Roman Catholicism. It just turns out to be the one true form of Christianity.
So I might go a little more anecdotal to you here, Sarah, because you're a new convert. I'm not going to ask you to give a didactic response of the history from 400 AD on, but I do want to know. We talked to Jay's wife about her being led into Catholicism and into Orthodoxy instead of Catholicism, and I have to ask you personally, what is it that led you to Catholicism versus Orthodoxy? And based upon that previous question, I just want to add to it. What was it that you were looking to get out of Catholicism, and are you getting it? You know what I mean? So why did you choose that over Orthodoxy? And then what is it that you were looking for? Because what I want is order, but maybe what you want is different, especially as a woman. Could you let us know?
Yeah, I mean, I actually wrote an article exactly detailing my 10 reasons, or my 10 kind of main reasons why I became Catholic, which, I mean, obviously the number one reason is just because I became convinced that it was true. So that really is the reason. But then there's 10 different things that I wrote an article about, which I don't know, maybe we could link it below this after.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, but for me, I think the main things were I wanted some real answers, because obviously I was Christian for my entire life, but there are so many things there's not really solid answers on. It's just I guess whatever your pastor says you kind of believe, or you can kind of find your own answers with it. So I think just that objective truth and logical arguments and historical arguments and tradition that's in the Catholic Church, that really just drew me to that. And then another thing is kind of just the requirement for spiritual disciplines within the Catholic Church. There's a requirement to go to Mass every Sunday. There's a requirement to go to confession and receive absolution, and all of these different things really attracted me to it, because that was one thing that I was struggling with in my faith as a Protestant. Was there's just this huge focus on you're just supposed to essentially be a perfect Christian or something just because you accepted Jesus into your heart at some point. And so because of that, it's you're not supposed to feel a temptation towards sin or something. It didn't really make any sense to me, because I would just, fall into sin or fall into temptation and then just beat myself up over it. And really the thing that keeps you out of sin and temptation is building those spiritual disciplines and having a real relationship with God, which is found through religion, I think. So to kind of combat what you said earlier when you were talking about how Protestants say, relationship over religion, I find that religion is what brings you into relationship with God, and everyone needs that structure and that discipline. And not just that, but also a church hierarchy, also a priest that you can listen to, also a pope, and an actual structure, an actual structure of authority there. So I think that really just attracted me.
So let me ask a couple of questions. Now, a lot of these questions I'm asking is because I actually want to know. And what I find to be confusing is, obviously we know there was a church split, I'm calling it that, between the Orthodox and the Catholics, but they're oh so similar. And there are things it's funny. I have a Catholic friend that I know named Aldo Badazzoni. He works for PragerU. He's a Claremont fellow, upstanding gentleman, really, really bright guy, has a great future ahead of him. And he's a handsome bloke too. And so, we got to get that guy married. But, what's kind of crazy is one time we were talking and I was I told him, I'm enjoying going to Catholic church right now. Just the veneration of Mary is just, bizarre. And I talked to the priest and he told me, there's some things you can, figure out with God, and that's not required to go to heaven to you don't respect Mary, but it's your faith does need to be in the work of Christ, and that's what we're most concerned about. And I told him, I go, there's just some things I obviously, as a Protestant born and raised, like I can't really get on board with. And then he was like, dude, you guys have Jewish space lasers in your services. And I was like, yeah, I was just laughing. I was like, yeah, you're actually kind of true. He's like, I can't really get behind that too. And so I know that every tradition has things that are going to make other people uncomfortable, that may seem extra biblical. And I'm not claiming, obviously, as a Catholic, you believe what the church says, but I need to understand this as a skeptic. I put myself as a Catholic skeptic because I'm not sure of everything. How do we know that the claim that the Catholic Church has the authority of the church, how is that real, particularly with the papacy? A lot of people say that it's not rooted in scripture or early Christian practice, and there's even divisions now between who's the Pope. Is it the Eastern Orthodox, the Greek? Like, who's the Pope? Is it the Vatican? Like, how do we know that the Catholic Church, capital C, not lowercase c, but the Holy Catholic Church, how do we know that they have the authority? And what is the evidence that the Pope should have any of my respect? Because a lot of them just feel like people I don't respect. So, I'm being completely honest.
It's a phenomenal question. And the Catholic answer, really the only answer which finds its root in historicity, is to look at the first ecumenical councils of the church. And when I was on Tim Pool debating my friend Jay, it was funny because I was trying to get out this basic point, that for the first 1,000 years of the church, what became the Orthodox Church until they split off from us in 1054, they shared the exact view of the Bishop of Rome, which the Roman Catholic Church has. That view involves the undeniable claim that he's in charge. The Bishop of Rome, in the first 4 or 5 councils alone, was literally requested to excommunicate the number 2 guys in the church, Patriarch of Constantinople. They came to him, Eastern fathers of the church, and they said, would you excommunicate the Patriarch of Constantinople? By the way, that happened at the, was it the 3rd or the 4th ecumenical council at Ephesus, which is where the Mary stuff was sorted out. I know we're kind of dealing with substance and procedure at once, and it's tough to keep 2 balls up. But I would say this with regard to Mary, at that council of Ephesus, it was dealt with specifically that you cannot, as a Christian, before there were Orthodox, before there were Protestants, all the Christians in the world were not allowed to say that Mary is the mother of Jesus the man only, because this splits his natures. You have to say she's the mother both of Jesus the man and she's the mother of God. So dichotomizing actually means that there's 2 separate guys. And of course, Jesus was not 2 separate guys. He had 2 natures, but he was one man. So all-time Christianity, going back to the very first councils of the church, which Roman Catholicism not only endorses, but it was Roman Catholicism that sanctioned these councils. It requires us to say that Mary is not just the mother of Jesus the man. Mary is the mother of God, Theotokos, not just Christotokos. So we Catholics look at the rest of the world that's saying, or the Protestant world more specifically, that says, you guys aren't Christian. You don't have early first millennial Christian practice. And we say that's absolutely wrong. And of course, the Orthodox agree with us. At that council, Nestorius was the Patriarch of Constantinople, the highest guy in what today is the Orthodox Church. And it was other Eastern Orthodox fathers that went to Rome and they said, you're the only guy in the church, the Bishop of Rome, who was the Pope, you're the only guy in the church that has the authority to excommunicate the Patriarch of Constantinople because you're in charge. Would you please do this? And that was literally repeated time and time and time again in those first 1,000 years. So we Catholics find it really, really strange that at the first 7 councils, about which, in terms of the authority, the historicity, the magisterial power of these first 7 councils, Orthodox and Catholics agree. So it's really strange that the Orthodox were with us for 1,000 years, 1,054 years, saying, the Pope's number 1. He's in charge. He can excommunicate other people. Like Michael Scott says to Dwight Schrute, you're not boss unless you can fire someone, right? The Pope could do this, and they requested it. So the Pope was in charge from the very outset. And we Catholics simply don't get why in 1054 the Orthodox started thinking that they didn't have to follow the Pope.